This is a tutorial on entering credit notes and following these credit notes through the order entry cycle. First step is entering the credit note in the order entry screen OE2100. So at the Ship to Customer field, I'm going to enter in my Ship to Customer, and defaulted into the order type field is the normal order. This is because for this particular Ship to Customer, that is the default order type. So at this point here, I can go to my pull-down menu and select Credit Note. Or I could have typed in the letter C, which is the first letter of Credit Note, and Credit Note would have been automatically populated in the type field. And I'll come down to the Purchase Order field, and I'll type in Return as the purchase order type. If there are any fields on the screen where a detailed explanation is needed, please refer to the tutorials that exist on the header block and the tutorial on the detail block. Next field is the warehouse. I'm going to leave it as my HO warehouse. This defaults in from the Ship to Customer, as does the branch field. If we go to the charges pop-up box here, we have the various additional charges, and in this case we're going to put a $3 credit against this credit note for freight. If I had have entered in any of these fields a positive value, I would have gotten a message saying enter negative amount for the credit note. So these fields have to be entered in as a negative amount as we're entering a credit note. If I enter values in these fields, they will be added together, and on the credit note that is printed out during the invoice print, they will be printed at the bottom of the invoice as one value under freight. So we'll close this box and we'll head over to the header block. Here's the reference invoice number field. In System Flag Administration that is set up by the system administrator, if the reference invoice field had been flagged as mandatory, we would be required when entering a credit note to enter a value into this field. But in this case, this is not mandatory. This refers to an invoice number for which you're entering this credit against. Now in our example here, we are going to enter in a reference invoice number, and we're going to select invoice 100035 from our list of values. And we'll see how this affects the behavior of the program when we get to the detail block. So now we'll come down to the detail block and enter in our product code. So I've entered in this particular product. Now automatically populated on the screen is an order quantity and a price. Because I've entered the reference invoice number in the header block of the screen, the program goes out to the sales analysis table and retrieves from there for the particular reference invoice number that I entered, that was reference invoice 10035. For the particular product that I've entered, the order quantity that existed on that invoice and the price that was charged on that invoice. So that is automatically populated by the system. If I now go over to the order detail information box, go to the reason code field, and we can see here that the effect stock flag is set. This is a field that reflects the reason code. So if I clear out the reason code field and do a list of values, I can see the various reason codes and whether or not they affect stock. Now in our example, I don't want this particular product to go back into stock, so I'm going to select a reason code that does not affect stock. So now we can see the affect stock flag is no longer checked. And at this point I'm going to add a comment onto this particular order, just noting that this was damaged goods and this was the reason that it was not going back into stock. We're going to add another product to this order. So we'll go to our list of values and we'll select a hammer from our list of values. Now we can see here that the order quantity and the price wasn't automatically populated once I entered the product number, and that's because this particular product does not exist on that reference invoice that I had entered in the header block. So we're going to have a return of 2 hammers. The price automatically defaults here from the price file maintenance in this case. On the first line, the price defaulted from the sales analysis tables. So now if we go over to our reason code field, we can see that the reason code RH does affect stock, and in this case, this particular item that we want to affect stock. At the time when this order is now committed, stock's quantity on hand will be increased by a quantity of 2 for this particular line, as we have the affect stock reason code selected. So now we're going to save the order. And now we have a credit note, 2184, and we can follow this through the system. If we go through the menu, we can go to the invoice print screen and print the invoice, but since this is a credit note, the invoice print button is highlighted. It's not grayed out, and we can go directly into the invoice print program, and that will automatically be run for us using our default printer that has been set up. So here's the invoice that has been created through the invoice print program. It's actually the credit note, and we can see on here we have the credit, we have our 2 products, and our text comment on there. We'll narrow in on that. And now if we take a look at the lower section of the screen here, we can see our freight amount that we had entered, the negative $3, our federal tax here, and the total, which is negative $69.32. So we'll close this off. Now we'll leave the order entry program, and we'll run the invoice journal for this. So we'll go into processing, invoice journal, which is a mandatory step, and we'll run our invoice journal. And the invoice journal is now displayed on the screen. You can see our order number, and invoice 10037 is the invoice number applied to this particular credit note. And we see our various amounts on the screen. So we'll close that off. We'll go to the last step, which is the invoice update program. The invoice update program will take this credit and move it into the accounts receivable module as a credit. It'll create sales analysis records for this in the sales history tables, and create GL transaction records. So we'll run this program, and a report is now produced reflecting the various general ledger information. So we'll close off this screen. Now we're going to just pop into the accounts receivable module using our fast track key, and go into accounts receivable, inquiry, query upon our bill to customer, and we can see here our credit 10036 for amount of $69.32. We click on the sales detail button. We can see in sales analysis our orders, our credit notes details. So if we can leave this screen now, we can take a look now at the general ledger to see how it has been affected, and we're going to go into the general ledger entry screen just to query upon the journal that was created for this particular order.